Well, we're finally here. Wave 3 of the Booster Course Pass has finally arrived. It being that it's the last wave for 2022, Nintendo has gone all out with the selection. The last wave we've covered shows signs of improvement with courses like Calamari Desert, Snowland, and Waluigi Pinball, and this one continues to do so with even better selections of tracks. Question is it worth the wait? Are the tracks actually fun and good? Is there going to be an inevitable Toad Circuit or Mario Circuit 3 equivalent? Well, let's not delay any further and jump right into Wave 3. But wait just a minute. For those that remember, Coconut Mug gained a significant update when Wave 2 came around, so is there anything similar to that? Maybe some anti-gravity on Waluigi Pinball? No, but we did get something pretty cool. You can now have custom items in your races. Yeah. That's totally gonna be fine and cool. But no, seriously, this is kinda sick. We could finally erase that coin from existence. Anyways, without any further delay, let's actually get into the races. We start the Rock Cut with London Loop, one of the earlier courses debuted in Tour. And while the Tour tracks are the most interesting courses to look forward to, I'm not exactly the strongest fan of London Loop. Nothing wrong with it, but the track always felt meh compared to the others. Not as meh as Tokyo Blur though. But how is the track in Mario Kart 8? Well, it's very conflicting honestly. The track actually doesn't have much going on for it, and the parts that it does have, they're very minor at best. I will say though, the abundance of chain chomps does make me smile a bit, but otherwise this track isn't anything special for the first 2 laps. However, when lap 3 rolls around, all of the chain chomps have gone loose and are now roaming the streets of London. Damn, this is the shit that goes on? Very weird. Even though it's a pretty cool bit, this track still doesn't have much going on for it. At the very least, there's something around to do, while Tokyo Blur just has swamps and nothing else really. Overall, it's not a bad course, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of my favorites for this wave. What is though is our next course, Boo Lake. This one is a bit of an unexpected surprise, especially since it's been speculated that Peach Gardens was to be in the Rock Cup. Alas though, here we are. Boo Lake has received a major overhaul when it came to Tour, giving it an actual lake instead of an abyss, as well as increasing the spook factor a bit. A bit of me wished it was Broken Pier that got the remake treatment first, but Boo Lake did need some major changes. Besides, the original doesn't even have a lake. How embarrassing. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's version expands on that remake further by giving it anti-gravity. While that's cool to see, how does the track play out? It's actually pretty fun, but there's one glaring issue that I didn't really anticipate when playing this version. The track itself is very short, which isn't really a surprise, especially when you factor in that Boo Lake came from the Flower Cup and Super Circuit. But it's still pretty short no matter which way you look at it. Even with all the visual upgrades, this track is still unremarkable for basically everything else. But hey, it's better than London Loop for this wave, so I'll give it a pass I guess. It's much more active than Mario Circuit 3 though. Before I forget, because I somehow forgot this in the original recording, the music for Boo Lake is absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite renditions of it ever, so I'll be listening to it for a pretty good while. Yeah, London Loop's okay, it's always been okay, it just thought I'd mention that there. Huh, so far we've gone quality courses. Can't wait to see the next. I see Nintendo. Yeah, Rock Mountain is visually the closest to Tour compared to the other courses, and it doesn't help that it feels like a Wave 1 track than a Wave 3 track. Nonetheless though, unlike our last disappointing tracks, this one is actually pretty solid. Rock Mountain is one of the more underrated tracks, so it's awesome to see it back in full action, even if visually it's a bit disappointing. As for the track itself, it's still as fun as ever as it was in Mario Kart 7, although the gliding physics for Mario Kart 8 do heavily affect this one to a certain degree, such as it being impossible to make certain shortcuts. But in place of that, there are some new shortcuts using the gliders in laps 2 and 3, so I can't be too mad. Also, I know nobody literally cares about this, but this ramp from the beginning is just gone. I didn't even realize it was gone, or even near in the beginning, but okay. Also, this slope is in anti-gravity, which is a bit fitting, albeit it does take out some of that challenge. Only a slight bit though. And the music itself is also pretty good. I really like the version of Rock Mountain that's heard in Mario Kart 8, so this is also a pretty good one. Overall, Rock Mountain is a pretty solid track, even if, once again, on the visual level, it's pretty kind of disappointing. Our final track takes us to Maple Tree Way, and oh boy, this track does not disappoint. While the track is largely based on its appearance from Tour, racing through it has never felt better than ever before. It's such a nice feeling too with how calming and beautiful it is, which is Maple Tree Way's strongest identity. Not to mention that, unlike Tour Saturation, the leaves aren't blinding to look at this time. Gameplay wise, it's essentially the same as in Mario Kart 7, with the added half pipes returning and all. Also the very first course they used them, mind you. Unlike most people though, I wasn't really bothered by the bridge's absence. I always thought I was out of place, to be honest. And on an overall level, this track is an amazing end, although it would have been great to have Rock Mountain be the final track. Before we move on though, I have to at least mention the godlike rendition of Maple Tree Way. It surprisingly fits Maple Tree Way's aesthetic pretty well, and once again, another banger. The Rock Cup has been a steady surprise throughout, London Loop being the one track to actually surprise me with Lap 3, as well as Bulik and Maple Tree Way being stellar. While Rock Mountain is good, on a visual level, it's pretty disappointing. But it's still a solid track that improves a small bit. In a way, it's more like Shroom Ridge than it is to Toad Circuit, so that's nice. With all that being said, let's take things up above and beyond with the Moon Cup, and see if it's deserving to be the final cup of the year. We start this cup with Berlin Byways, one of the more anticipated city tracks just for the music alone. And because of that, I'm going to be talking about it right now. I feel conflicted about this one. Listen, it's not a bad remix. In fact, I quite like this one. But it doesn't hit the same beats as the original one from Tour, so I'm kind of split on this one. Although if you want to hear some amazing renditions from both sides, there are mashups available that does sound pretty good. It's like these two were separated, and if you put them together, it becomes godlike. Okay, enough of the music, how's the actual track and visual standpoint? I don't talk about the visuals for Tour tracks that much because they're all pretty identical when it comes to the visuals, being kind of lackluster, but it is what it is, I can't really change anything about it. But the layout for this track is actually kind of impressive. It does start off with Berlin Byways 2, which is a bit surprising until I realized that this version came out first before the other two variants. So it does make sense, but it does flow nicely to 3 and 1 as well, so I can't complain there. Although, much like London Loop, there is a bit of nothing that goes on in between these laps, especially lap 2 for some reason. Even though there's traffic, it's still very empty, and I don't really like that. But near the end of lap 2, we have swamps, and in lap 3, we get womps. Now I gotta say, seeing those swamps for the first time in Tour made me so happy, and seeing them again in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe gives me even more hope that there's some potential with these guys. Trust me, there's going to be a custom track based on Womp's Fortress. It hasn't been the first time that's happened, but otherwise, Berlin Byways is just a pretty okay track. If not more so better than London Loop, honestly, just because there's a lot more going on for it. But then again, they're both kind of equal on the same length. But hey, at the very least, the music for Berlin Byways will always be top tier. Now here's one that I wasn't exactly the most thrilled about, but I was still pretty excited nonetheless. Peach Gardens has always been a more conflicting course to me, because while I didn't find anything bad with the course, I never really found it to be my favorite. But this version in Mario Kart 8 solidifies it in a pretty interesting way. Laps 1 and 2 are pretty much identical, no doubt about it, although there are some changes that I wasn't really fond about and some that I don't really mind. For one, the track is a lot more open, which is a bit of a weird feeling considering that in the original there are some flower patches to, not make sharp turns possible most of the time. So having this just be gone is just very weird. The same could be said with the chain chomps, because in the original, they carry these item boxes, which is a bit of a cute detail, but in the remake, nah, they're just stationary, and it's a bit sad to see that gone. And the maze has been replaced with this giant piranha plant, which is kind of humorous when you think about it. It's like Peach grew it by herself. At the very least though, those hedges have been trimmed down to these amazing sculptures. Love these guys. However, things get very interesting really quickly in lap 3, where you make a sudden detour and drive around the track backwards. Now let me tell you, if I didn't see those arrow signs at around lap 2, I would have been so surprised that we get to finally drive through this spot from Peach Gardens. Finally, this one has actual purpose instead of this. Overall, Peach Gardens is a really nice surprise, and I'm really happy that a lot of changes were made to make it more, well, dynamic and interesting. Not to mention the music is actually pretty good as well. So, good job, Nintendo. Oh boy, Merry Mountain. I don't know how to feel about this one. Merry Mountain has never been my favorite course in Mario Kart Tour. In fact, apart from a couple of other tracks from that game, Merry Mountain might be one of my least favorite. I know it's a favorite to some, but to me, this course always felt very boring. I couldn't pinpoint why it felt boring to me, but it just did. But okay, let's put out the positives first before I bring up my main gripe with this course. Visually, it is freaking gorgeous. I love the visuals for this track. It really has that Christmas magic sparkled all over, and it's a bit more unique than the other snow tracks like DK Pass. And the music itself is actually pretty good. I wasn't really sure about the music for Merry Mountain, the original, but this one is really solid. Perfect for Christmas music and all that. But the track layout itself... Okay, this took me weeks to figure out what was wrong with this track, and I think I know what it is. Everything up until the peak of the mountain is pretty okay, like those split paths and, you know, some trickable ramps. But the journey down the mountain? It's barren. There's nothing there to do aside from bumping into these spin boosters. And not even up until laps 2 and 3, although really it's based on timer, there is a glider ramp that appears and you can glide off of there, which is interesting and nice, but this does not accommodate the emptiness that the rest of the track beholds. Not to mention that the course is very simple for what it is, and simple doesn't always mean bad, but for a course like this, I don't know, at least some obstacles like Snowman would have helped. Overall, there is nothing inherently wrong with Merry Mountain, but by far it is one of my least favorite courses from this entire wave. It's a bit unfortunate too, because this track is really nice on a visual level and the music is good, but the track design and everything else about it is just mediocre. Not terrible, but passable. Finally, after all of that, we finally arrive at our final course for 2022, 3DS Rainbow Road. I think it comes to no one's surprise that the 3DS version of Rainbow Road is one of the best renditions ever conceived. The entire track is built around this section given from Mario Kart 7, and it's a full-on journey with you driving around planets, the rings of Saturn, onto the freaking moon, and this cylinder that ends all of it off with a giant turn. This is a pretty amazing Rainbow Road, and thankfully, Mario Kart 8's rendition mostly keeps it the same as it always is, albeit with a pretty new graphical upgrade. And I gotta say, this is miles better than Mario Kart Tour's version. And not even that, I'd go as far as to say this is better than even the 3DS original. This course feels very high-tech and very unique compared to the rest of the other Rainbow Road courses. And there are some small minor changes there, but nothing that will actually make me point them out. Not to mention the moon has an anti-gravity section, which is very consistent, mostly because Lunar Colony also does the same thing. And I'm happy to say that the music itself is also pretty good. This might be one of my favorite renditions of 3DS Rainbow Road ever. It's so techno-esque and still emotional. I'll always prefer the original one on a bit of a emotional level, but this one is amazing regardless. Everything about 3DS Rainbow Road is fantastic, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. What a fantastic end to the Moon Cup. Indeed, the Moon Cup does not disappoint us. While I wasn't the biggest fan of Merry Mountain and to an extent Berlin Byways, these courses are at least very good and not really anything bad. Peach Gardens managed to surprise me, and that's honestly the most surprising factor about this cup. And as expected, 3DS Rainbow Road is an absolute journey and caps off the Moon Cup on a pretty high note. Waves 3 has been nothing but good throughout. There may be some small stinkers, sure, but at the very minimum, they're at least decent and not terrible. By those standards alone, Waves 3 has solidified itself as one of the best waves we've ever seen. This makes me a bit more hopeful for the future of the Booster Course Pass, and I cannot wait to see what next year has in store for us with the remaining few waves. That brings us to the end of this review. I think we can all agree that Wave 3 is one of the best waves that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has to offer. If there's one thing that I have to critique on with this one in particular, I don't think it's a lot, but I feel like new characters could have benefited this a whole lot more. Not that it's needed, but it would have made this one a little bit more special, especially since it releases near the end of the month. However, we still gotta discuss the tier list. So on screen is an updated tier list since last time. My opinions on some courses have changed a bit, but the list should still remain mostly identical to the last one that I've shown. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching this. This will probably be my last video for 2022 unless I do decide to upload a random video that ends off the year. I just want to say to thank you all for 500 subscribers. I didn't expect to actually approach this milestone, especially because my channel up to that point wasn't really getting attention, but here we are with 500 subscribers. As a special occasion it is, I'll let you guys decide which videos I should cover. Do keep in mind though that I'll pick out the video that actually sparks me the most interest in, and that this won't affect other future projects like that Smash Bros. Unpopular Opinions video that I'm probably working on right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and remember that Stu cares about you, and Merry Christmas, because Merry Mountain is a track.